What's up, everybody? It's Jay Scott from The Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. Hope everyone's having a great day. Fall is in the air. I know the chill is affecting everybody or most everybody around the country, especially on the East Coast and the Midwest. Hopefully it's warmed up by the time this episode airs. On today's episode, I have a very special guest, my own 14-year-old, soon-to-be 15-year-old son, Chris. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. Thank you for doing this. I know we've talked about it in the past about what you wanted to come on and talk about, and we're going to discuss how someone your age absorbs music and how they connect to rock music versus other genres. Let's start first, though, with the very first question we always ask first-time guests, and that is the essence of the show, and that is, just like every rock song has a hook that sucks you in, every rock fan has a moment, whether it's a song, an album, a band, or performance, that hooks them on rock and roll. What hooked you?
Well, you did, obviously. When I was around, 4 or 5 years old, you always play rock music in the car. I mean, I could remember one day where I came in the car, I was singing, Lady Gaga or whatever, and then you're like, oh, Jesus, I gotta lead him in the right direction. So you started playing guys like Butch Walker and Pete Yorn, more alternative, more like country rock. So about a couple years later, I go see my first concert, Butch Walker, and I knew all the words to most of his songs and everything, and I was only 5 or 6 years old.
5 years old. That was down in Kentucky. We did a road trip after a soccer game.
Mm-hmm. And I remember being on your shoulders and just I didn't picture this guy to look like. I didn't know he was going to have, I thought he was going to have long hair like AC/DC does or whatever. So it was kind of different for me to see, the actual, the image of what they look like versus how they sound. Of course, I'm singing along, and Butch looks up at me from the piano when he's playing the song Synthesizers, and he says, I better be on my best behavior tonight.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a great experience. I don't know if the song was Synthesizers. I think it was.
I'm pretty sure it was Synthesizers because I asked you, why is he singing about synthesizers when he has one right in front of him?
But he really interacted with you, and so did the band, the whole show. They were smiling, they were waving to you. They got a big kick out of a 5-year-old being at their concert. And then we got invited backstage to meet Butch, after he came off the bus, and Butch spent some time with you, talking with you about your music. And then you mentioned Pete Yorn, and you mentioned Jesse Malin, and he was like, yeah, those are my buds. And it was a good experience. And then also the opening band, too, which was this band out of Madison. Yeah, which was this band out of Madison, Wisconsin, called Loxley, which was kind of like a Beatles-esque alternative band that had a lot of good harmonies and a lot of good catchy riffs as well. Some of you may know them from the American Family Insurance commercial.
The Whip.
The Whip, yeah, that's right.
It's also the Columbus Blue Jackets goal song. So
of course, hockey. But yeah, that was a great show. You hung out with Loxley. They gave you drumsticks. They autographed a CD for you. Butch was totally into you. That was a really good experience. I know you really like Butch Walker and used to sing She Likes Hair Bands all the time and some of his other stuff. And you really connected with that music at an early age. There was also Brendan Benson, who we listened to a lot. Because I didn't want to play the hard stuff and the heavy stuff for you at such a young age, because I didn't really think that at that age you would connect with it because it was more aggressive, more loud. And that's why I was always a big fan of Pete Yorn and, of course, Butch Walker. And that's why I always played them. And Brendan Benson, Jesse Malin, who was some other stuff that we played too, like Ryan Adams. And, Lucero was another band that we played a lot, or I played a lot while in the car. And then as you got older, I started to play more of the aggressive stuff, more of the harder stuff.
Even today, I still go back and listen to Loxley. Loxley just put out a single a couple months ago. I listen to that once in a while, and I go back to when I was young, and I remember listening to Pete Yorn when we were in California in the car, and it just brings back memories.
Well, that is
to the same music,
right? That is the most valuable thing about music, right? Is the way you connect with it, and is the way it can bring back memories. and take you to a place when you were younger. And, you know, when you hear a song, David Lee Roth always mentions it a lot, or did mention it in an interview, that music has the ability to act like a time machine. When you hear a song that you listen to over and over again when you were younger, when you hear that song when you get older, it takes you back to a place in time, and it creates those memories. So it is true. Music has the ability to do that. Butch Walker, Pete Yorn, Brennan Benson, some of the other artists we mentioned as well. Where did it go from there? How did you connect with music? Because I noticed, like, all that music that you were listening to prior to that, Lady Gaga, not that Lady Gaga isn't a great talent, because she is, but all that music that you were listening to, which is more of a pop flavor, seemed to kind of completely disappear from your everyday listening habits.
Well, right. I was like 4 years old, and you know, I really wouldn't remember that stuff. But as I got older, I started listening to more punk, because you would play like Foo Fighters and the Gaslight Anthem in the car. So I kind of went on YouTube on my old computer that I had and started listening to Foo Fighters and the Gaslight Anthem. And Foo Fighters for a long time was my favorite band, and listening to songs, and even going back to when Dave Grohl was in Nirvana, I still really like that stuff.
Foo Fighters really was a band that you connected with after your initial exposure to the music that I was playing with you. In large part was because of the Sonic Highways special that aired weekly on HBO, where they were recording new music in different cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C., Louisiana,
Seattle. I remember Seattle was a big one because the first song on that album, Something From Nothing, that
was recorded in Chicago, though. That was recorded with the guy from Cheap Trick.
They did a special montage of the song, and I just remember it was so cool, you know, listening from their past albums and then finally seeing like this cool masterpiece they made on their new album. I thought that was really cool, and it really like helped me understand how bands go through and record, and how hard it is to write lyrics and produce that good music. Like just waiting months on months for a new album to come out. It certainly made me more appreciative of the band's music.
Yeah, I mean, Foo Fighters really does a great job of getting out in front and really marketing themselves and positioning themselves to go across all age groups, you know, from someone your age, and I think you were like 11 or 12, maybe even, probably like around 11 when you first heard that, to someone my age, you know, who's more the classic rock, you know, demographic. And they have an ability to touch on all different age groups, which is really interesting. I don't know if there's really a band out there right now that does that. And their music is good, too. None of it matters is if their music is not good. So that's always the key first thing, right? And that was the first time I actually took you to a record store to get their album when they came out. We went to Rolling Stone Records.
I was in 4th grade. It was right before Christmas break, and it was snowing so hard. We went to Gene Jude's. I don't know if you guys know, but it's a really popular hot dog place by us. And we went to Gene Jude's, and then after we went to go get the new Foo Fighters album because my grades were good. So I remember getting in the car and then putting the album and just blown away by the new music they put out. Because before on the first song I bought on my iPod that I had when I was a kid, when I was younger, was Walk on their album before, Wasting Light, and my mother let me get it. I begged her. It was 99 cents, and I was actually really surprised that she let me get it because it was such a good song. And my mother isn't really she's not really a fan of rock music, but she likes the Foo Fighters. Like you said before, like it connects to all age groups and all different kinds of people and their personalities, so I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And then your reaction to going into a record store. I remember driving down there, and you're like, Dad, where are we going? I'm like, we're going to go to this record store. He's like, what do you mean, record store? I'm like, well, place where they sell music. You mean that's all they sell is music? I'm like, yeah, there used to be a whole bunch of them when I was growing up, and now there's few and far between. But that was an experience in itself because, you know, people your age now get their music. It's much more accessible than it was when I was growing up. I mean, you had to go to a record store to get the music or listen to it on the radio. But if you wanted to buy music, you had to go get the physical copy. And walking into a record store with you, seeing how kind of overwhelmed, you know, you were by looking at all these records and images and just not knowing where to start, that was a cool experience as a father to see you go through that and kind of see you absorb that.
There wasn't really a lot of people in there also, too. It was just us, because that's kind of the sad part, too, is, like, every day probably less and less people show up to that record store because, you know, they can buy it online or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's true. I mean, a place like that on a Friday night and a Saturday, I mean, Friday nights and Saturdays are obviously, like, the peak times, but you'd walk over there or you go into a record store, and that particular one is Rolling Stone Records just outside of Chicago. It's in Norridge, Illinois. And it'd be jam-packed. When a new album came out, and new album releases, I think, were on a Tuesday back then, Monday at midnight, these record stores would stay open, and there'd be a line around the block waiting to get the new Guns N' Roses album or the new Motley Crue or the new Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, Metallica, whatever it was. There was an ability to do that, and that was all part of the experience. And sadly, that just doesn't happen anymore. And I think generations like the one you're in right now lose out on that experience, because I know people in your age group really do like the experience of doing things, you know, based on statistics and whatnot. You know, the younger generations really like the experience. That's why festivals are so popular now, because it's an experience. That experience, I'm afraid, is probably gone forever for most people your age. So sadly, you have to find a different way to connect to music.
Well, one thing you got to consider is, like, there's a new way people can connect to music. Whether it's, I know this is really popular in my generation, whether it's you're hanging out with your buddies and playing it on the loudspeaker, or you're finding new music through Spotify or whatever music platform you have. I mean, it's really cool to be like, oh, I found this really cool artist. And you show all your friends, you show your family. I think that's like big as it was when you were a kid, but it's pretty special to find bands that, like, connect to you, like, online. And it's something you never had when you were a kid.
That's true. How does that affect how you enjoy music? I mean, I know there are bands that have a heavy social media presence, like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And I know you're not on Facebook and Twitter, but you're on Instagram. But how is it when a band connects with you on Instagram, involves you in a conversation, comments on a comment that you comment on? How does that make you feel?
I follow a lot of bands on Instagram, and they all post their tour dates, when they're releasing a new song, or pictures of their last concert. Sometimes I'd go to some of those concerts, and I see, wow, I was there. And I remember we saw Diamond Head, Erico opened up for them, and I just remember it was at the Forge. I just remember, like, seeing that and seeing them play and listening to their music weeks before, and finally get to meet them. And then they go ahead and put the pictures on Instagram. And then I remember I commented, I was like, cool show, I was there. They responded, glad you liked it. And I was like, my heart dropped. I was like, whoa, that was really cool that they noticed me. Like, not a lot of, more popular bands don't really notice people. Erico and Dirty Honey, they really care about their fans. And I'm not saying the big bands do, but, like, it's more, like, focused on their fans. As they get bigger, they kind of grow more fans that way. So I think that was really, like, a cool experience.
More bands that are starting out.
Smaller, yeah.
I think that's very important in today's day, because the way the artist brings in revenue is much different than it was in my generation. When a band signed a record deal, they got upfront money, they got a percentage of the sales of the records, and the physical copy and the presence of that revenue was huge back then. Now artists get like a third of a penny for each stream that you play. So if you play like 10 streams or 10 songs, stream them from Spotify, they get like $2 out of all that, or not even $2, probably like not even $1 actually. So it's very different how they bring in revenue. So how they connect with the fans on social media, like responding to your posts, following you back. If you subscribe to their YouTube channel or their Instagram page or Twitter page and whatnot, that's very important to how a band markets themselves and gets on bigger gigs or gets on regular play on some markets for radio. So it's all about the likes. It's all about the subscriptions that people have. It's all about the social media traffic that they're able to draw up and build. That's how they succeed, and that's how they bring people to their show and have them buy merchandise.
Well, another thing too is that they have jobs outside of their bands, right?
Not all of them.
So, most of them do to get money because the music that they put online, like you said before, they don't even earn a buck for like 10 streams. So they have to. They're trying so hard, their shows and their music and everything, to gather money to put effort into their new album. So that's really. I think bands work more hard now than they did in the past to get more popular. So that's one thing you got to appreciate too, is like how hard these bands are working, like not sleeping at night, coming up with lyrics or buying new equipment. That's really special too.
Well, I think bands from my day worked hard, but I think it was just different, right? When you think about the stories that Motley Crue tells, or other bands that are, talk about sleeping in cars, or, Metallica talks about the hand sandwich, where you put, the lunch meat on your hand, and that was your sandwich, ham and mustard, and you'd roll it up and you'd eat it, and living in one apartment, infested with cockroaches. So I think bands throughout all generations have worked hard. However, there was more of an infrastructure back in the day. There was MTV was an outlet where when they actually played videos and music. Radio markets were much different, where DJs were allowed to play what they wanted to play, and they would play deep cuts. Or they play if a new band came out, that was local or that was new, that not a lot of people were playing. A DJ would bring in their own record and play it. Now radio is completely different. There is no outlet for new rock music on regular radio. So, yes, they do have to work harder in connecting with their audience, whereas I think the work previous was more on producing the music. So now bands have to produce the music, and then they've got to go out and connect with the audience, because there's no infrastructure for them in their new music. They have to, find an audience. They have to build an audience. The other thing that's a lot different, too, is back in the day when there are bands that really did not achieve the stardom or success that other bands did, whether they released an album, that music pretty much went away. You couldn't find it, and there are collectors out there that have it. There are bands that just didn't reach the stardom level that other bands that during that period in the 80s. What's different now is anytime you put music on Spotify, or if you upload something on YouTube, it's there forever. So you can go back to it and you can find it. That's really cool, and I really do appreciate that, because that's a lot different. There's a band called The Brought Low that I just did for the New Music Spotlight, and they've been around for over a decade, and they don't really have a lot of mainstream success, or they don't really have a lot of success outside of the area that they play in. They're an East Coast band. They've done some stuff in the Midwest. But they work hard at what they do, and they release some really awesome music. Now, back when I was growing up, a band like The Brought Low, who's from New York, me being in Chicago, it'd be very rare if I was able to be exposed to that band. I would probably never hear of The Brought Low 30 years ago, 40 years, 35 years ago. Whereas now, I can be on YouTube and I could be searching, listening to a band's music. Like, for instance, I found The Brought Low because I was listening to La Chinga from Vancouver, Canada, and they were a recommendation for the next song to be played on YouTube. Same thing with 1000 Mods from Greece. A band like 1000 Mods, nobody in America would ever hear of this band 35 years ago, 30 years ago. Chris Lane, who's going to be on this week's Chris Lane from the band Station, who's going to be on this week's New Music Spotlight, made a comment to me after we stopped recording about the scene, right? We always talk about the LA scene. We talk about the Seattle scene. And I always talk to you about this stuff. And each market had their own scene where local bands playing original music were playing clubs, and people would go there Friday, Saturday nights, or whenever the night was they were playing, and they would pack it. And this was all original music back in the day.
Yeah, now it's just like cover bands.
Right.
playing at like town festivals and stuff like that.
Right.
And bands are working so hard, like I said before, to, you know, make a name for themselves. And then these festival owners just hire like just people playing other people's music.
Well, that goes back to the fan. That's another. But let me finish my thought. So each local market had a scene that, you know, was able to produce new original music. And Chris, after we got done interviewing, said something. You know, the scene now is planet Earth, whereas a band from New York, a band from Florida, a band from Greece, a band from South America can reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. And I thought that was really interesting that he said that. Very interesting perspective. Because that is true. Whereas years ago, a great band in Florida or Chicago was maybe not able to gain any traction, but still a great band, now has that access for everyone around the world, which opens up so many different doors and so many different avenues for them to pursue, which I think is really cool. So after Foo Fighters connected with you, after the Butch Walker concert, you know, you went to with Loxley, you and I started to go to a lot more concerts, which was a whole different experience for you. The first concert we went to was at Soldier Field to see Metallica on their Hardwire tour with Avenged Sevenfold. And that was a unique experience because that was the first time you actually saw a band in a large setting like that, in a large stadium. Talk about that. How did that make you, you know, connect with music?
It was just a lot of people there. I've never seen so many people. I didn't even know like that many people liked Metallica until that moment, because that really like changed my perspective a bit. It kind of got me more into Metallica a bit, seeing how they look like, how old they are, and going back to when they were young and listening to their newer stuff. And from that moment, I just really listened to heavy stuff like metal and like heavy metal into the 80s, like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and then going all the way to now to like Avenged Sevenfold and 3 Days Grace.
Well, that experience at that Metallica concert was right, like you said. Like, you know, you had seen Butch Walker in a small club, and then you go to this big stadium where there's 60,000 people there. It was just incredible. And yes, you are right. In a setting like that, it's a completely different vibe than a show at a club where you're watching screens, because the place is so enormous and you're so far back from where the band is actually playing. So it's a lot harder for the band to connect on a personal level when you're sitting on the back. And we still had good seats. Like, you know, we weren't up on like the third tier or the second tier. We were
kind of by the edge in the corner.
Yeah, we were back, you know, on the opposite side of the stage. So if you picture a football field, because it was at Soldier Field, they're in one end zone and we're in the other. And here we are watching screens, and, you know, I don't know how much I paid for tickets, but it was a considerable amount. But yeah, so that's a totally different vibe. And then to follow that up, we went and saw Iron Maiden and Ghost, which was a cool experience for you too, which was extremely loud.
Yeah, I love Ghost. Ghost is probably one of my favorite bands, and it was kind of cool because I knew of Ghost before I saw them, and I knew what they looked like. I just never saw them in concert and how they played. Cue the lights, and the lights turn off. I don't know. It was like they turned it to white, and you see this figure walk out, and he's wearing a mask, and he's wearing a robe. He has an upside-down cross necklace, and they just go out and they play Square Hammer.
Well, the imagery is very important to Ghost, too, and that's a throwback to when I was growing up. I mean, you had bands like Kiss, you had Alice Cooper, and you had bands that were very theatrical back in the day, and that has gone away for the most part, and Ghost is one of those bands to really kind of connect with that and really try to bring that back, because it is an important aspect of music. And being a kid your age, I remember how I connected with Kiss when I was a little younger than you, but still was the same thing. I saw these guys with four white faces, with each had their own kind of different look on, you know, the white was the backdrop of the makeup, and they had, you know, Ace Frehley had the silver, and Gene Simmons had his design, and Paul Stanley had his star, and Peter Criss was the Catman, and they all had different colors, and it was very unique back then to see something like that. And they were able to bring in an audience based on the image. I mean, their music, of course, still has to be good. I always go back to that. And if the music is bad, it doesn't matter what you're doing image-wise, people aren't going to listen to it. but it was a way to connect as a young rock fan back in the day, similar to what Ghost did. And Ghost was great live as a great opener for Iron Maiden. Then Iron Maiden comes on, right, and just is extremely loud. And then they've got the Eddie imagery, with the face and the trooper, playing the trooper and playing Wasted Years and Children of the Damned and Number of the Beast and all that stuff. And here you were sitting next to me or standing next to me at, I think you were 12 at that time, singing to all those songs, which I thought was really kind of cool. So that was a different perspective, because we really haven't been back to a big show.
And we were up close too. We weren't far back.
Yeah, we had better seats for Iron Maiden than we did for Metallica, and we were still, center. We were behind the pit, so we had good seats. But the only other big show that we've been to since then wasn't as big as those two. Was Foreigner and Whitesnake.
Yeah.
And, that was a different vibe, too, because that was more radio-friendly rock from when I was growing up. And, when you think of Foreigner, when you think of Whitesnake, you think of a lot of radio hits back in the 80s, and Foreigner, of course, in the late 70s. And they were great, too. I don't know if you really appreciate that kind of stuff, because maybe that's not really your vibe or not really your thing. But I think it was still good for you to see that show.
It was, because I remember a bunch of older people, like older than you, like dancing in the crowd. I was like, what is going on? And I just, it was really cool to see like normal people, the heavy metal, like metalheads, like going to shows and stuff like that. I just saw like ordinary people like you'd see at the grocery store, like dancing to rock music. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. So
yeah, and then of course, we've been to a lot of smaller shows. We mentioned Diamond Head and Erico, at the Forge out in Joliet, where there was probably 50 people there. And you got to meet the guys in Diamond Head after the show. You met the guys in Erico, so that was a really cool experience for you to do that. And then we've done a lot of small theater shows, too. I mean, we've seen Rival Sons. We've seen Greta Van Fleet. We've seen Johnny Lang. We've seen Winery Dogs. We've seen Ace Frehley. You went and saw Judas Priest when I was in the hospital. You went with a friend of mine, and you saw them with Uriah Heep. But there's been other shows, too. I'm trying to remember.
I mean, I saw Ringo Starr with my mom.
You saw Ringo Starr, which is still really cool, because there was a lot of musicians in that band. First of all, you got Greg Raleigh from Journey's original lineup. You've got Steve Lukather from Toto, who's an amazing guitar player, who, when you see him in the Ringo Starr band, or if people have seen him with Toto, you really don't appreciate the skill that Steve Lukather has in how he is there with just some of the other great names that people mention. He's a phenomenal guitar player.
So when I saw Ringo Starr, I hated it so much. No offense to Ringo Starr, but it was a totally different vibe of a concert you'd expect. It was in this little picnic area, right? And there's over probably, I'd say, like 400,000 people there.
No, there's not.
There,
no. That place, I know the place you're talking. There was probably
packed.
There was probably about 10,000.
It was hip to hip.
Yeah, there was
people sitting down.
There was probably 10,000 people. 400,000 people would be the largest concert ever. And that place in which is the Ravinia in Glencoe, I think it only fits.
No.
I think it only fits about 10,000. Not even 10,000. I'm telling you.
There was a stage, right?
I know.
That was 10,000 people, but there's like 10 times more that amount of people.
There was probably no more than 10,000 people
area.
there.
I look to my left, there's people going all the way to the
horizon.
there's
a lot of people. But
I look to my right, there's people going on the horizon. Like, I didn't even see Ringo Starr. The whole concert, I just heard music.
Yeah, you were in the picnic area.
Yeah. I couldn't hear him. Mm-hmm. And I hated it. I was like, how could people do this? How could they listen to music, live music, and not see who's playing it? Like, I still appreciated it, but I also didn't I wasn't into it. So
yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah, I mean, when we saw Blackberry Smoke, and they were with Ida May, and Ida May came on, they were phenomenal, and Blackberry Smoke was doing an acoustic set during their tour. This was like it was kind of like a living room vibe is what they had going on, and I really enjoyed it because it sounded perfect. I don't know I think you enjoyed the show, but I don't know if you really connected with it like I did, because I appreciated the simplicity of it and how it just sounded absolutely perfect, when they were playing live. you're more into like edgier stuff, and I think one day you will appreciate it. But I think being when you just turned 14 when we went and saw that show, coming from the type of music that you listen to now, I think it was a little different. I still think he liked it, but it was just it was what it was.
I didn't like the fact that everyone was sitting down. I thought that was kind of, I don't know about you guys, but I think that's really disrespectful when a band's playing and the crowd's sitting down. I just think that's like, hey, this isn't good music. I'm just going to sit down and watch it. I think that's kind of disrespectful.
Yeah, I see your point. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it was an acoustic set, so it was more of a laid-back environment. Like I saw Blackberry Smoke a couple months ago at the House of Blues in Chicago, where it was an electric set. They played, they had their full set going, and it was a much more different vibe. I saw them with Tedeschi Trucks Band over the summer too as well, where they were, with their electric guitars and whatnot, and it was a different vibe. I think I do see what you're saying. When we saw Johnny Lang at the Arcada in St. Charles, I took you to that show, and people were sitting down for that too as well. It's just a different vibe. It's a different audience. I don't think it's a meant for disrespect, but I just think it just, depending on what type of music they're playing and depending on what type of vibe they want to create. Most of the shows you're going to go to, your age and as you get older, are going to be standing up. Yeah. But when you go see a show like an acoustic set, most of the time that's going to be sitting down and enjoying the show. I will say this, though. We saw Greta Van Fleet, and we saw them at the Aragon Ballroom. And I'm glad, the experience of seeing them, they played 3 nights here in Chicago last December.
It was awesome.
I know you really liked that show. But the fact that up until then, every show that we went to was just a matter of walking in. You'd park the car, you'd get out of the car, you'd walk up to the venue, you'd walk right in. You'd be inside the venue in a matter of minutes after the security check.
You had to wait in line.
Yeah, I mean, the line was wrapped around the block to get in to see Greta Van Fleet, and that's how it was when I was younger. You go to a show that was general admission, meaning you could sit and stand wherever you want. You had to wait in line, and that was great to see because I have not seen that in such a long time, where you park the car, you get out, and there's a line wrapped around the building to get in, through security and all that stuff. So that was really cool for you to experience that.
Well, we also had to wait a little bit for Black Veil Brides too. I remember the line was out of the door a little bit, and we had to go in and wait.
Yeah, that was more. Yeah, I remember that. It wasn't as much as Greta Van Fleet. Black Veil Brides played at the Riviera with Asking
Alexandria and Crown the Empire.
Yeah, we missed Crown the Empire, but no, that was a good show too. That's kind of more your thing. I appreciate Black Veil Brides. I do enjoy them, and I do enjoying kind of their vibe. But that's, I think, you've really connected with that.
Well, I mean, as I gotten older, especially
as you've gotten older, you're 14 still.
2019, a whole year. I mean, I started listening to less and less heavy metal. I just think like my music taste has changed a bit as my personality has changed.
And that will
just
continue.
Just listening to different music. I mean, I remember going hard, like heavy metal, some death metal too, thrash metal. I remember going hard at that stuff, listening to that every day. I just kind of got tired of it. I mean, no offense to all the heavy metal bands. I just wanted to listen to something different, like get back into music again. Like it was another whole experience going back to, I remember going back to Butch Walker and Pete Yorn and starting from there again.
Yeah, no, and you're going to continue to evolve. I mean, you are going to be 15 in a couple months, and your musical taste will change again and again and again. But I will promise you this, you will always go back to what the core is during this time frame, right? The music you grow up with or the music you listen to while you're growing up, you'll always come back to. You may want to put it down for a little bit. You may want to back away from whatever and go in a different direction, listen, but you'll always come back to what you listened to when you were growing up. I mean, I remember there were times when I was growing up, I started to listen to different things. I started to listen to some pop stuff, I went through like a pop phase for a few months when I was younger, like listening to like Duran Duran and Men at Work and all that kind of stuff, and a little more new wave. But then I went back to the hard rock and the metal and whatnot. So my advice to you is to always keep evolving with your music taste. Always keep looking to expand your horizons. And that's really with anything in life, whether it's food, whether it's culture, whether it's anything. Always try something different. Always look to expand. You never know what you're going to like. I mean, I connected with Pete Yorn based on a review in a magazine before a road trip I took to Michigan. I was looking for music to listen to in my car, and I bought a Black Crowes album that someone had stole from me. So I bought that. I haven't listened to this in a while. I'm going to buy this. And I was looking for something new that I had not heard before. I read this review for Music for the Morning After in Pete Yorn, and I'm going to go buy this. And the following day after work, I had all my stuff packed in my car, and I had the CDs in my car, and I opened up Pete Yorn, Music for the Morning After, got on the highway, flipped the CD in, and I listened to that for 4 hours straight, just on repeat, going up to Michigan. So music connects with you at different times, at different moments. But again, whether it's Lucero, Butch Walker, Ryan Adams, Pete Yorn, Brendan Benson, I love that music. I always find my way back to
childhood memories
and listening to memories. But I also love new music too. And that's the thing that I get a kick out of listening to some of the stuff that you recommend that I check out, because I have the ability through you to stay fresh with music, right? I mean, I still like the stuff from my childhood, and I love that stuff, but there's so much new music out there that's coming out, and so much great music that I've been able to expose you to, whether it's Greta Van Fleet, whether it's the Struts, Rival Sons, and so on. But then you've also turned me on to bands too, like
the Amazons and Erico. Yeah, Goodbye June. Another thing is too, you could really become good friends with someone over the music taste that you like. You can become best friends. I remember, I just moved schools, and I'd take the bus, and I'd be wearing all my rock shirts like Metallica and Greta Van Fleet to school. And on the bus, this kid comes up to me. He's like, "Who's Greta Van Fleet?" And I'm like, "They're a band. You should listen to them." So the kid comes back a week later. He's like, "I really like Greta Van Fleet. They're cool." And you start to connect with someone, and you really become friends too. And I remember that friend showing me music too, and showing other people music too. So it's kind of like you teaching someone, and then they disciple what you're saying to other people too.
It's very, very true. And that happened. It's always one of the greatest things about rock music is when you get a true rock fan, they want to expose other people to what they're listening to, which is huge, right? I've always said that you can always judge a person based on their music collection. It's a little tougher to do that now because everything's on the phone and everything's digital. There's not that display like I had when I was younger, where a friend would come over and they would just go up and down my shelf and look at what music I had, and I would do the same when I would go over to someone's house. "Oh, what's this? How's this? Is this any? What do you think of this band?" And that's how you'd start a conversation.
I remember when I was in 6th grade, my friend, he told me he got a guitar. I was a bit confused. I was like, "Why would you get a guitar?" He's like, it's really interesting. I really want to play this stuff. So, the next day he brings his guitar to school, and after school he's showing me Foo Fighters songs he's playing on guitar, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I begged my mom to buy me a guitar, and it's nothing really special. It's a cheap guitar for about $80. I still have it right now. And I remember bringing it to school, and then after school playing "Oh yeah, look what I played." And I'd play this song, and he's like, "Oh yeah, look at this, what I played." And it was kind of like a friendly battle on what songs we learned and how complex the songs were. And that really built my music taste too. It really opened me up to other music by playing guitar and "Oh, wow, he's playing that chord. That's kind of cool. Oh, he's using this pickup. That's kind of cool." So it really, the instruments too really like it changes your like perspective of music. So that was another cool story that I had with music experience with a friend. So,
and how, speaking of your friends, right now you're a freshman in high school and you've been listening to rock since you were a little kid. How do other friends respond to the music that you listen to? What do the majority of kids listen to in terms of music?
Well, when you tell someone that you listen to rock, they're like, oh, like the Beatles, oh, like Pink Floyd. I think it's like they don't really know about rock music like we do, right? But they know a little bit because of their parents and like of the popular bands like the Beatles in the past. So I think they like a lot of people know of rock music, but they don't know of rock music like today, like bands like Dirty Honey. They're not really exposed to that like we are. But the majority of kids listen to pop and hip hop and rap. I mean, some hip hop is okay. I mean, I could listen to it, but like no longer for 45 minutes, and then I'd go back to rock music. It's really different from when you were a kid because it was like flip flopped, right? Rock music was really the majority. Everyone listened.
Well, hip hop and rap music was essentially underground, and that music was about injustice, social injustice in the inner cities with police and economic injustice as well. It was a purpose back then. It was an outlet for people in the inner city to speak about and rap about. Whereas now it's become more of a pop flavor. It's not. Very few artists. There are still out there, but very few rap or hip hop artists still have that Public Enemy, the NWA, the Grandmaster Flash, all that type of hip hop from back then that was more or less a protest, where now it's more
who can swear more. Not when you were a kid, but like now, like who could swear more, which beats were more complex and more like catchy. So I mean, you got to appreciate that stuff though, because people are still working hard to make those music.
Sure,
too.
Absolutely.
You have to appreciate it too. You have to appreciate all types of music. I mean, maybe a few. Mm-hmm. I mean, you may dislike, but for the most part, you should really appreciate all music and what all backgrounds they're coming from and why they're making this music.
As your friends have gotten older, have they been more open to listening to rock music?
Some of them can, but for the most part, I don't think they really understand it. And another thing is that the kids, they really want to be different from what their parents did when they were a kid, right? They really want to be rebellious, and their fathers probably listened to rock music probably just like you, and they really wanted to be different from their father and what their father did. They really wanted to be rebellious. So I think that's another part too, is that they really just wanted to be different.
Well, I agree with that, because I think back when I was growing up,
you didn't want to listen to
rock
the
music,
jazz and
jazz was always more of an underground thing anyway. Yeah. But my point is that when I was growing up, rock was the rebellion. I had to sneak at Grandma's house. I had to sneak Ozzy Osbourne music. I had to sneak Judas Priest music, Iron Maiden, Motley Crue. I had to sneak that stuff into the house because Grandma was against me listening to that. They did not like it. And as we got older, they relented a bit. Grandma and Grandpa relented a bit, but I was still like, I still remember having Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne and having that taken away from me because of the cover of the album. And rock was that rebellion back then. Rock was the music that parents didn't want you to listen to. And I think now that has turned into rap and hip hop, whereas I think parents don't want their kid to listen to that music because of some of the subject matter. Yeah. Whereas that becomes the rebellion where now, my parents are telling me not to listen to it. I want to listen to it more. So I think there is a definite connection with that as far as, like you said, being rebellious and being the rebellion. I still think rock is still the ultimate rebellion music if you look at the lyrics, if you look at what's singing about it. But because it doesn't have a presence with the young people and because there's not a lot of infrastructure for people to get new rock music, it doesn't matter at this point, because I don't think people are hearing it on a primary basis. On a secondary basis, yes. If someone like you goes into school and talks about Greta Van Fleet or talks about the Rival Sons,
Very few people will know.
Right, talks about Joyous Wolf or whatever, they're like, they look at you like a deer in headlights, you know. I think when they get a chance to listen to the music, I think then they'll change, but that has yet to be determined yet.
I mean, most of the crowd, like people at my school or people wherever, they don't really like enjoy music. They just listen to that music just because.
Well, they're music consumers.
Yeah, just because like their friends are listening to it, or the popular majority of people are listening to. Like they're not even really like thinking about the music, what it's really saying. They're just doing it to be part of the crowd and having a good time. So I think if people stopped doing that and realized what kind of music they're listening to, it'd be very different, and the culture of music and hip hop and rock or whatever genre would be very different.
Well, I also think too, you've made the comment to me over the years, I wish I grew up in your generation, where rock music was very prevalent, and even pop music still, you know, was not like it is today, where it's auto-tuned and Pro Tooled to levels that I don't even know, but it was still a natural, organic music. You know, I mean, you know, Duran Duran was still listenable back in the day. The Cure was still listenable back in the day. Pop music was tolerable.
Yeah, and pop music when you were a kid, like The Cure, is considered rock now.
Right, right.
And I think, as like I said that a couple times, I wish I grew up in your generation. I really started to regret that and think about that because, you know, as you put more understanding into that, you could listen to music in your generation now, or any generation now. You have all access to that. So I think that's kind of cool too. You can listen to music from now. You can listen to Motley Crue. You can listen to the Beatles, Elvis Presley. You can all listen to that right now. But when you were a kid, you couldn't, because you didn't have that music platform. You can only listen to what your generation's listening to. And maybe so like the 70s and 60s, but now you can really listen to everything.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think when you say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you would make that comment to me, I think it was more about the music landscape, where it was primarily rock, right? It was primarily, you know, with the pop rock, and then there, you know, back in the day there was no subgenres, right? It was pop rock, hard rock, metal.
Yeah,
that's what it was. And then thrash came later on with Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer and other bands. But there was no subgenres. Now you've got country rock, new rock, stoner rock. Yeah. It's just like, I don't even know. To me, it's all rock and roll, right? It's all rock music. But I think when you make that comment to me, I understand what you're saying. I think you're absolutely right about having access to everything. But in terms of the music landscape, where it was such a dominant factor in it growing up, where you turn on the radio, it was rock. You switch the channel, it was rock. You know, there was their classical music, and there was their jazz, and there was their other things too, or in your country, but it was primarily, I mean, there was 5, 6, 7 radio stations that played rock music in the Chicagoland area, and probably more than I'm forgetting about, whereas now you have a classic rock station that regurgitates and plays the same songs every day at the same times. I mean, we were just in Colorado a couple weeks ago, and I made a comment. I got in the car, and I heard Back in Black at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And we went to Boulder for the day. We spent the day in Boulder, and we got back in the car at like 4. And I turned on the radio, and they're playing Back in Black, same radio station. They just played this song 6 hours ago. Yeah. So again, and I think that affects how people listen to music, right? Because the classic rock stations are not playing any new rock music. You have to go out and search it. So let's talk about that. How do you find music? Like, what's your process as a 14-year-old kid?
If I'm not listening to my playlist, which has bands like Dirty Honey and Joyous Wolf and Amazons and like I have a playlist called like New Rock. It's made of like 80, 90 songs of just bands that release music from 2018 up that are new to the scene. So I have a few playlists with New Rock, but if I don't listen to that, like I want to find something new. Like, for example, on Spotify, you click on Greta Van Fleet, their artist, and it shows their picture and where they're from and stuff like that, and their most popular songs. And then you scroll down, past albums and all the way down to artists similar or similar artists. And you find bands like Goodbye June and like the Amazons and Dirty Honey, and then you click on those, right? And like, oh yeah, I know this band already, and you scroll down, same thing, similar artists, till you have like a network of like different artists and of similarity, and you can really find new music off that too. So that's another cool thing too, like you didn't have when you were a kid. Mm-hmm. Like the similar artists is pretty much the most valuable thing on Spotify. Like if there was no similar artist button, then some of these bands would never they would no one would listen to their music besides like their friends. So that's another cool thing too.
How else do you find new music? Is it primarily through that button, and then you find a band that you like, and then you go on YouTube and you watch their videos, and then you know, is that how you discover new music?
For the most part, yeah. Very few times my friends will like bring up new music. The friends I showed rock music, when they come back and show me rock music, like, yeah, I already know that band, right? So there's really no one besides you that really can show me, you and your friends really can show me like new rock music. So I really have to find that stuff all on my own. And I don't know about you, but I think it's really rewarding when you find a good band on your own. I think it's like, it sounds so much better, like to
well,
me.
The connection is different,
yeah,
right?
Like, because you found that your own. You found that, not anyone else, but you. And I think that's really special because, like, you can really appreciate it more.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a huge thing. I think one of the things, now when you find a new band, whether it's Dirty Honey, whether it's Kodiak, and you go and you listen to their stuff on YouTube or Spotify, do you subscribe to their page? How do you stay connected to that band?
I mean, for the most part, yes, I do follow, I do subscribe to the bands I like, right? So that's, I do that.
Well, that's a huge thing, because that's, back in the day, there used to be music charts, and there's still music charts, you know, like number one rock song, and all that stuff is based on, back in the day, was based on radio play and requests and all that, you know, music bought and purchased.
Now it's all on views,
subscriptions.
For the most part,
yeah. So it's important that when you hear a new band and you like them, subscribe, like their Instagram page, you know, like their social media pages, and you know that helps the band get on their mailing lists.
Yeah.
That's huge for new bands making new music. And I agree with you. I still feel the same way. Like when I discovered a band, like when I discovered Pete Yorn, right? I talked about that earlier.
Yeah, it sounded much better.
It sounds much better, but it's your connection is different, because no one in your circle of friends is listening to this. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like it becomes your guy, your band. And because you discovered them as they were starting out, and you've seen them evolve and you've seen them grow. Like, you know, Pete Yorn's latest album just came out in August or September. And I went, you know, I ordered it. I got it from his webpage. And I still buy his music, because the connection for me with him is much different than, say, a band that I heard at a party or in someone's car. Yeah, I'll like that music. But like you said, I agree with you. The connection is so much different when you feel like you discovered them without any other influence from anybody.
Going back to like the music culture, it's really hard to start a band now, because not a lot of kids are playing music instruments. Mm-hmm. Like, I only know 3 other people that play guitar or drums. Like, and it's really frustrating.
Do you know anybody that plays bass?
No, I don't. No, I don't think anyone wants to play bass either. It's kind of just like if you play guitar, then you can play bass, like the basics of bass. So I think it's really frustrating how people like play instruments, because playing instruments is really cool, and you can create whatever, whether it's good or bad. It's your stuff. It's your music. Like music you created, that's like really special. I don't know if you have ever experienced that.
Yeah, I never picked up an instrument outside of some casual guitar, piano stuff. Your uncle played guitar, so I was always privy to him and his friends come over and being allowed to sit in the corner and keep my mouth shut and just hear them play riffs off of each other, or familiar riffs from songs that I knew. So I understood it and I appreciated it, similar to what a person playing an instrument does, because my grandfather, who you never met, was a piano player. And he would create music in the basement when I'd stay over, and I would hear him play the piano. Or your uncle would play the guitar with his friends, and he'd have 3 or 4 friends in his bedroom, and they'd all have guitars, and there was one guy with a bass, and they would just be playing for hours. They would just play and play and play, and they would try to teach each other how to play this riff and that. So I experienced it. I may not have played it, but I experienced what it meant to play an instrument and the work that goes in to master your craft. And that's something that, because I was exposed to it, I have a great appreciation for. I do agree with you. I don't think a lot of young people are playing instruments. However, I do think as you get in high school, more and more people will start to play because, as you mentioned earlier, I think people's music taste will really start to evolve in high school into college and whatnot. But you'll be able to connect with people playing instruments. Not as prevalent than when I was growing up or your uncle was growing up. But I still think that there are people that do like rock music. I always like when I take you to a show and I see other young people there. And I think, it's not as prevalent. I mean, because I was going to shows when I was really young, sleeping over at a friend's house, quote unquote. And then we would ride our bikes to shows and we'd lock them up, and then we'd have to leave early a lot of times because we had to make curfew. But we were still going to shows. We'd save our paper route money or cutting lawn money. And back in the day, the shows weren't as expensive as they are now. So you had better access to it. But yeah, I think that's an important part too. When you have a lot of friends playing instruments, that deepens the connection with the music.
For any music artists now listening, like older, like more in like your 20s or 30s, like, that was probably like the last like wave of people like playing instruments. Like now there's really like I said before, no one playing instruments. So like rock instrument players like now and like guitar players and drummers, what we focus now is we focus on getting better and evolving, not looking for anyone who else plays an instrument, because that'll come later, obviously. We all focus on like getting better at our chops, getting better at riffs, getting better at chords, like scales. That's what we focus on now. And then as we get older, we discover more people are playing, and then we connect. Well,
yeah, absolutely. I think that's the same as it was when I was growing up and generations before. You want to master your craft. You want to practice your scales. You want to learn different styles. That's why I think I told you earlier this year, you were playing a lot of cool stuff, and you were listening to, like you said, a lot of harder, more edgier type music. And I said, if you want to really master guitar, you got to expose yourself to other genres of music, because that goes into your palate, right? You're absorbing it, and then it's going to come out. So when you're listening to the hard stuff, if you listen to some blues, some old school blues like John Lee Hooker or Howlin' Wolf or Elmore James or whomever, that's going to be part of your palate. That means like when the stuff you start to play, the output, that's going to be part of it. And that's going to make you a better guitar player with more depth and more knowledge of the instrument. Mm-hmm. So that's important too, to listen to everything. What are the bands? Like if I were to look at your playlist, like what are the bands that you listen to?
So like I said before, I have about like over 40 songs, close to 100 in my playlist, and I'm constantly switching.
Now, how many
songs.
Playlists do you have?
Like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on what kind of mood I'm in, but like I'm constantly adding songs to these playlists, switching them out with newer ones, taking the old ones out I don't really listen to anymore and putting new ones in. So for example, like I'm listening to the new Highly Suspect album, and I put that on a couple of my playlists. So I don't know if anyone listens to Highly Suspect. I highly recommend Highly Suspect. I highly recommend you guys go checking them out and, really giving them a follow, really listening to their music.
Well, that was one of the bands that you exposed me to. I really like their last record. I haven't really connected with their first album yet, and just because I really haven't listened to it. I only listened to a couple songs. I think their first 2 singles is what I listened to. But I really like their last record. I thought, we've listened. We just
Boy
listened,
Who Died Wolf.
Yeah, we just listened to that record in the car over this weekend, and I really enjoyed it. Another band that you turned me on to as well was Goodbye June, which I really enjoy. Yeah. I really enjoy Sheepdogs that you turned me on to. They were a really good band. I really enjoy Hozier was a really cool band that you turned me on to, and I really like that as well.
With Hozier, I think that guy has the best voice and music power.
Well, you and I had that debate the other day. I like Jay Buchanan of Rival Sons, and there's a lot of great singers out there. I'm not saying that but you like the guy from Hozier. What's his name?
James Hozier.
Yeah, no, I like Hozier. I do like them a lot. Everybody. I think for the most part, only been a few acts that I haven't really connected with that you turn me on, but most of the stuff that you put in front of me, I do like and I do enjoy.
Like I showed you Erico.
You did. You showed me Erico before the Diamond Head show. You were like, check this band out. This band's opening up for Diamond Head. Let me go see them. And I liked them. I mean, and then when I saw them live, I was like, man, this is like an old school metal band, like an Armored Saint, Metal Church type-ish band. It was really, really good. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Ace a few episodes ago on our New Music Spotlight. He was really a great guest, and just Erico is a great band as well.
I got to talk to some of them after the show, I just remember them remembering them being so cool, and like I want to be in a band. I want to be just like them. So, Erico, if you're listening, you guys really influenced me. And what I listen to now, so...
Well, you've been able to meet a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but a few artists. Obviously, you met Butch Walker and Loxley. We talked about Erico, and you met Brian Tatler from Diamond Head, who's the founding member of Diamond Head. You also met Tyler Bryant.
Yeah, Tyler Bryant. He's a really cool fella, too. Like, that's his main focus, is playing guitar and making great music. Like, none of the other stuff...
Well, he asked you, too. He's like, do you play guitar?
I'm like, yeah, I play guitar, and then he gave me a couple of picks.
He went in his pocket, and that was a really cool experience for you. Tyler Bryant is one of my favorite new artists in terms of his playing, in terms of how he approaches the guitar. I think he is a new guitar hero out there. I love his new album and his new music. Erico is really cool, but yeah, you also you have exposed me to a lot of great new acts. What about some other bands? I know there's some other stuff that you like too that we've talked about.
I like Dirty Honey a lot too, and I think those riffs are like more like a classic rock,
classic
like
blues.
A little bit like AC/DC a bit, like their chords they use, and like the guy has a great voice, and he really projects, and
Mark LaBelle,
he really leads the band with his voice. Like the song "When I'm Gone," I mean, like they come out with the guitar riff, and then he comes out like screeching with his voice, and it's really sweet. So that's another band I like. I also like La Chinga too. I mean, I don't know if you agree with this, but they kind of like remind me of like Kiss with their album cover.
Well, yeah, the illustrations of their album cover are a throwback, and it's very cool. It's a very all their covers are very interesting, and even their marketing flyers are really interesting too. If you have a chance to follow them on Facebook or Twitter, they've really put out some really good stuff.
Another band too is Mondo Cosmo.
I've never heard of them.
I showed you them in Colorado with the song. You're like, yeah, these guys are really good. It was their single that they had, and I just found out about them about 2 months ago. And the new song called Black Cadillac, I recommend you guys going checking that one out. Another band too is Joyous Wolf.
Joyous Wolf is a band that's able to seamlessly play all past genres of music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they do it very well. I mean, I know you've heard the song like Undesired, and they have a little edgier sound, like a Soundgarden, Alice in Chains-ish, mixed in with like a Guns N' Roses and like the 70s guitar rock and whatnot. So it's all very cool. I do enjoy them as well. As far as classic rock versus new bands, like you've heard, I still remember walking into Amoeba Music with you in California a couple years ago, and you going and wanting me to help you buy 2 albums, and they were Dr. Feelgood from Motley Crue, and they were Audio Slave's debut. So in terms of as your music tastes have evolved, how has your appreciation for classic rock versus new rock, like how do you compare the two?
Well, with classic rock, like being younger than people who, like, of the time when they listen to classic rock, I start to get a little like mad and angry because most rock fans now listen to the same stuff over and over and over.
Most
again.
older rock fans.
Yeah, older, over and over again. And I don't really understand it. From what I've like heard from people, like whether it's like my grandpa's friends or your friends or other people like I just meet, it's always like, oh, new rock sucks, or new rock isn't as good as it was before. It's just noise now. I mean, they sound really like their ego is like really big and like they want their music to be popular again. But you do realize within 10 years, those classic rock bands will not be anymore.
Pretty much. Yeah. I've said that before.
They won't be here anymore. And what then? What is rock going to be now? Like these people like listening to classic rock, what are they going to listen to?
But how is your connection towards the stuff that I would play in the car, the classic rock stuff, versus the new stuff? Like how is there a different connection for you?
I mean, it's very different because like I start to think when I listen to classic rock, like how did they like produce this? What kind of like tools they used? How different was this made than it is now when everything's on a computer, and back then it was all
analog,
like tape and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool too, as I know now. But as far as like me, like I said before, me being of youth and young, I really appreciate the newer stuff now than the older stuff because like it's younger, it's more my generation, it's more like what I'm into, right? And I really haven't had the chance to grow up like yet because I'm only 14 on this music. So like I really don't understand like how bands change as much as you do. So it's really like it's going to be a big roller coaster throughout the next couple of years on what music I listen to and so forth.
In terms of the classic rock bands, who are your favorite classic rock bands? Like who do you like to listen to that you picked up because what I was playing in the car?
Well, I know the best band of all time, Led Zeppelin.
You've been raised well. Who's ever raising you did a great, wonderful job.
I mean, I don't care what you guys say, but Led Zeppelin is the best. I mean, no, it's all part of opinion, but what I think the best band is Led Zeppelin. And I really like Led Zeppelin because all those guys in each of their instruments were like gods compared to everyone else. And like Robert Plant, one of the best singers of all time. Page, one of the best guitar players of all time. Jones, one of the best bass players in like songwriters of all time. And of course you have
not so much song, but arrangement wise.
Yeah, and you have the drummer Bonham.
Yeah, Bonzo.
He's probably the best drummer of all time. So, I mean, you don't have to be good at your like instrument to make good music, but they obviously did. They were good at their instruments. They were good at everything, except behavior, of course. But
wow, did you finish reading Hammer of the Gods?
No, I took a break from that actually.
Okay. All right. Who bought you that book?
My uncle.
Okay.
He listens to this podcast. Uncle Steve, if you're out there, what's up?
So you listen. So you Hammer of the Gods, and then what's another classic rock band that you like?
Well,
I hear their riffs coming from your room like all the time.
Metallica.
And who else?
Of course. Metallica is really the big one. But there's other bands like Motley Crue, of course. I mean, I like Motley Crue because of their image. And like Motley Crue could easily become popular in today's generation.
Well, they'd be very controversial.
Yeah.
So and then what are your like favorite newer acts?
Greta Van Fleet, of course. I love Greta Van Fleet. They really like inspire me to make music and play guitar. They just really they make me appreciate everything I do now when I listen to them. Like I remember the brothers talking about what inspires them to make music is nature and everything like that, and like the mountains, and like how they appreciate like the wilderness, and that's really their foundation of writing music is what they see around them. So that's I like Greta Van Fleet a lot because of how they inspire other people and what they're inspired by. Another band I also like is like I mentioned this before in the episode, the Amazons.
Mm-hmm.
I just think their riff writing is like second to none greatness, and every song is like a new riff that's like can like kick people's asses and just make people like fall down to the ground. I think that's really powerful. Other bands too, like the Struts, I really enjoy. I mean, they're like kind of like a Queen a little bit like that, and so like I really enjoy them. I mean, I still like Led Zeppelin's like in my top 5 favorite bands.
Well, how do you
now.
feel about the Led Zeppelin, Greta Van Fleet? Like when people compare those two bands?
Most of the time when I hear people compare Greta Van Fleet and Led Zeppelin, it's bad. It's terrible. They sound exactly like Led Zeppelin. Like they shouldn't be able to do this. Led Zeppelin was the greatest band of all time. Why don't you like new bands that sound... I mean, I don't even think Greta Van Fleet sounds a lot like Led Zeppelin when you listen to them more. But why don't you want more of Led Zeppelin now? Like what's wrong with that? Like, I know Led Zeppelin was the best band of all time, but even Led Zeppelin says they're thankful to have Greta Van Fleet.
Well, Robert Plant said that he did like them. You know.
And he also mentioned a guitar player that would like the singer, so...
That would be Jimmy Page. So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, that's... What else? Greta Van Fleet, the Amazons? Give me one more that you like.
I like this one band. It's really different from all the other stuff I listen to, and if you were with me in person and you would listen to stuff, my favorite stuff with me, you wouldn't understand why I like this band, but they're called Wallows. They're kind of like a new wave, and I really found them off a video game. And that's a different thing too, is like video games have like music soundtracks, and you could really discover bands from that. And of me playing hockey, I was listening to the NHL 19 soundtrack, and I found out Wallows, Pulling Leaves Off Trees, was a really good song. That it was really catchy. It had a really heavy bass line, and it was more of like pop new wave, but like all their songs are catchy, and like it really inspired me to put that in my music making with rock. I think that was really cool, like to have a band that's different from all the other ones, like in my top favorite bands. Like usually when you ask someone what are your favorite bands and like give me a countdown,
well, it's always evolving.
Yeah, they really show you like the foundation of like it's all similar, right?
Well, no, I get it. Well, cool. So this was fun. So I think we're gonna.
Yeah, I'll definitely be on again.
Oh, is that right?
Please like and follow.
So, okay. Well, no, we'll talk more about new music on future episodes. It's always great to get a younger rock fan's perspective because I think that's what's kind of been missing from the conversation. But Chris, I appreciate you doing this. It was fun. I know we talked about it for the last couple months about you coming on, and I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a great experience. And to everyone out there, please like and follow, and give my dad support. He's doing this for good reason. He's really speaking his heart out and obviously inspiring other people to listen to other music. And he's just working hard, and he's all for the bands. He's all for rock music. So if you could really just appreciate that, and I'd really be appreciated by that. So thank you everyone for having me, and hope you have a good night.
Well, thank you all again. Thank you for those comments, Chris. I do appreciate it. And once again, this is Jay Scott from The Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you around.
See ya.